Hello, this is Born Nilsson with Random Art Hack, and today we're going to be doing a quick build of a candle. We're going to start off in ZBrush, go ahead and sculpt out the candle, bring that into Blender, in which we're going to unwrap the thing and decimate it. Then we're going to bring it into Substance Painter, in which we're going to texture it, bring it into Unity, where we're going to add this flame particle effect, and then be done. So let's see how fast we can do this. Without further ado, let's jump straight into ZBrush. All right, so now we're in ZBrush. What we want to do is go ahead and append, so go to Subtool, Append, and we get a cylinder. And then go ahead and delete that sphere we don't need anymore. Get the cylinder, and I'm going to just hit the move and then scale it using the green transform right there. Basically the size you want. And then go to Geometry, Dynamesh, and Dynamesh that thing. Now you saw I didn't use geometry. I have my own tool, so I'll go there just for speed's sake for the tutorial. Now I'm going to turn on Sculptus Pro, and I'm going to go ahead and go over this to kind of get rid of all the polygons that you can see. Sorry, I was having a struggle there. Words are hard. Like such. And now what you can do is you can actually cut into this. Since it's still, I actually like using clay buildup the best. I can cut into this to make it look like it's melted a little bit. Smooth it out if you get weird looking topology. And then on the bottom here, hit P. And then I'm just going to get the move brush. And I'm just going to kind of pull out some melted area a little bit. You want some indents and some outdents. Concave and convex. English is a struggle right now. It's real. And then I like to go over the bottom right here and just add some extra detail like this so it looks like it's melted. And now here, the wick is going to be right about there. I'm going to decrease the size. And I like to get these circles like this because the facets will actually catch the light and it'll look really cool. All right, so we're almost done. We need to add some drips of wax, maybe make this a little bit more melty. And again, melty, really? I don't know if that's a word. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Dynamesh again. I'm going to increase the resolution, and I'm going to Dynamesh this, hit polish, because we want a lot of geometry. I'm going to turn off that Sculptus Pro, go to Geometry, divide this maybe twice, like such. And now I'm going to go ahead and mask out using the lasso. So hold Control to get the masking tool. I'm going to mask out some areas that I want drips. I noticed that trying to just use a brush gives you very artificial looking drips, especially if you use the standard. The standard is the worst brush to use for drips. And you don't want too many because you want to break it up with some areas of rest, marked by some areas of noise. You can make skinny ones, you can make thick ones, it doesn't really matter. And I do like to vary the size because it gives you something interesting to look at. You can see that I'm deleting this a lot. And that's good to do. Make sure you get what you want, right? And now, what I do is I'm going to turn off the alpha for the clay buildup. And then I start low and I go back and forth. And then I kind of work my way to the top. Just trying to round this thing out. I'm holding Alt right there to kind of give it more of a spherical shape. Holding Alt to cut into that after I get the shape I like. Like such. Look at it from the side. See if that looks good. It's looking pretty good. And then we're going to do the same thing on the back here, but not as many drips because it's not as melted. Just going like this. And then making my brush really small. I'm going to turn on Sculptus Pro at this point. And I'm going to add just some very small drips by going back and forth and then going upwards. You can see already the difference in the type of drip. I like the mask drip a lot better, so I'm going to go back to that. Turn off Sculptus Pro. See, I like that a lot. So using masking for the drips is the way to go. Put as many as you want. Again, less is more in my opinion. I'm going to get a little bit messy because it's a tutorial, but you can see the point that I'm trying to make. All right. So that's not good. I'm going to change that a bit. You always want the bottom to be a little bit thicker than the top. And then you can do that. All right. So now a cool little thing that's looking actually pretty decent from a distance. You're not going to see these things up close. And so now what I want to do is I want to do some cleanup work. I'm going to turn on Sculptris Pro. I'm going to go to Dynamesh, make the resolution substantially less, polish project. And you can see that that actually gives you a pretty clean mesh right there. I'm going to just actually smooth the tops just ever so slightly. Right here. Because then it gives you a sense of transitioning into the drip instead of just this dripping tacked on. Right? So you can see right there how that's kind of looking. I'm feeling we've spent enough time in ZBrush. I'm ready to bring this in almost into Blender and get this taken care of. You can go through and you can smoothen this up as well, so it just looks like a little drop. Looking from a distance, making sure it reads pretty good. I'm actually liking this. Now, I would work on this a little bit more, maybe skinnier drops, play around with this, but more or less, that's how I get the droplets. I might go through and do a little bit more clay buildup on the bottom here, so it actually looks like melted wax dripping into this. Going back and forth can give you that layered look, where it looks like it's kind of pooling, and then you can even have stuff going up like this. That looked really good. I like that look. And then again, I'm actually going to turn off Sculptris Pro and smooth this out, increase the smoothing. I keep going, my object keeps going over here. And there's a candle. All right, that's looking pretty good. So now what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to go ahead, bring this, so this move tool, while holding, I believe it's Control. I just kind of bring this up like that, so it just flattens it out. Now I can go through and smoothen it just ever so slightly, maybe Dynamesh it. And just smoothen this out, because I don't like it being so non-flat. So again, I'm using Sculptris Pro on to give me a little bit of geometry around this to get rid of all these weird artifacts. Zoom out. It's looking good. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to export this as a high model. So export, a high polygon. You find the folder you want. So with the folder created, I'm just going to call this high, as in high polygons. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Z plugin, decimation master, and then preprocess current. And then I'm going to actually go ahead and decimate the current one, like such, and then export this as decimated. What I'm going to use that for is, in Blender, I'm going to use it basically as a base to kind of wrap and shrink wrap onto. Next, I'm going to go ahead and go to ZRemesher, so Geometry, ZRemesher. Scale this all the way down, turn off Adapt, and ZRemesh this thing. And maybe you want some, actually that's going to be fine. You'll see why that's going to be fine in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and export this. I'm going to call this low, A. Let's go ahead and try that again with the adaptive on and see what happens. Maybe I'll just change this to 0.2 without the adaptive on. A little bit better. The reason I don't want the adaptive on is it'll get you some weird artifacts where the drips are. So that's actually looking pretty good. So I turned the adapt off and I just changed it to 0.5. Can export that. That's actually the one I want, so I'm going to just call this low. And we're done in ZBrush. Let's go ahead and go to Blender. So I'm in Blender. I'm going to go ahead and delete the default cube, import my object that I just made, so you have to find it. So after you find it, you just go ahead and import that. Now I'm also going to import the decimated object so that I can shrink wrap the low polygon object onto it so it retains its shape. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to go to Add Modifier, Decimate, and then I'm going to go Add Modifier, Shrink Wrap. You got to pick a target, so group, like that. So now as I decimate this, you can see that it'll actually kind of retain the shape. So I decimate it to the point that it starts to warp too much. I'm going to hit triangulate because it will give us a few more faces. And we're probably going to be looking at this from a distance, so something like this. And that actually looks fine. So Let's put shrink wrap up top. Okay. So hit apply for decimate. Hit apply for shrink wrap. And now we're done. We got our low poly candle. What I want to do is go ahead and hit U, Smart UV Project, Island Margin. I'm going to change that to like, actually it's fine at 0. And then I'm going to go ahead and look at that in the UV image editor. You can play around with this, get it a little bit better looking if you want to. For the demo's sake, I don't really care. That looks fine. I'm going to export this. So export.obj. And I'm going to export it as low, selection only. So we're done with Blender. Let's go ahead and go into Substance Painter. Now that we're in Substance Painter, go to File, New, select a file that you want. So I'm going to select low. Is that the one I wanted? Close. There we go. And then in the texture settings, I'm going to go ahead and do Baked Textures. You'll see something that we need to go and change really fast. Right here is not smooth, and you do want it to be smooth. So we got to go back to Blender and smooth that out. So in Blender, tab into Edit Mode, go to Shading, hit Smooth, and then re-export that. So export OBJ. Yep, everything's good. Now we can go back and redo this. So New, discard. And there we go. Now it's going to look better. Go to Bake Textures. I'm going to actually just do 512. I don't care about anything else. Go ahead and do high. If this was for a commercial project, I would do 2048 because then I'd have more leeway, but for speed's sake, I'm just doing it this way. And there we go. We have the details baked out. And if you have any weird clipping like this, first of all, most game assets actually do. You just don't realize it. But there's some things that you can go back into Blender and fix. You could manually move some vertices around, make sure that's triangulated, maybe fix the UV map a little bit better than we did. But all in all, this is basically what I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a fill. And I'm going to do a roughness of about 0.4, I find to look a lot like candle wax. And then the base color, I like to kind of do a light yellow color like such, and you're done with that. Now I do like to add some thickness, or not thickness, some highlights. So I'm just going to change this to red so that I can see what I'm working with. I'm going to change the roughness down to like 0.7, so it's a lot rougher, so it's not that wax color. I'm going to add a bitmap mask. I'm going to do curvature like such. Now the reason I have the red on is so that you can see what it's basically doing. This curvature is pretty weak, so I'm going to go ahead and do add levels. Playing around with the curvature, you're going to be able to see like such, kind of where the mask is going to be at. I want to invert this, so just hit invert. And now these little areas I'm going to darken, so it's just going to give it ever so subtle highlights. And then I'm going to change this down to black. Go to linear burn, and then just bring that down. So here we have this. You have some subtle highlights. They're a little bit too strong for my liking, so I'm going to go ahead and pick this mask, hit add filter, and go to blur. And then it just blurs it just ever so slightly. And then you can increase the strength if you want to. And that's looking pretty good. Now, if linear burn doesn't work, you can play around with the other ones. I like overlays pretty great. Look at that. And so there we go. We have the candle more or less textured, except you want the emissive channel. So I'm going to fill in one more time. Under the texture set settings, there's a little plus sign. I hit emissive. I'm going to turn everything off except that. I'm going to crank this up to an orange color like so. So kind of an orange-red. So now this is being emissive. I'm going to add a black mask. And then with the black mask selected, a paintbrush, I'm going to go to, let's go find brushes. We want something very soft. So probably just the default brush, which we already have selected. Let's look for some alphas. Maybe there's a softer alpha. This one should work just fine, but I do, if we had, yep, nothing softer. This is it. So we can make our own, but whatever. I'm going to change the flow down quite a bit, like such. I'm going to turn on off back face culling. So I should be able to, depending on the size of this, be able to get through the other side as well. Yep. So now as I click this, you can see I'm actually adding off of the mask and getting a glow, which is kind of cool, right? So it looks like this thing's glowing a little bit. I'm going to change the color down to kind of a black to erase some of that. Again, change the flow down quite a bit. And I just want it kind of at the top there. And there we go. Now we have the emissive. As I bring this into Unity, it's going to look really good. So I'm going to go File, Export Textures. You want to change the config to be, scroll down, Unity Metal Roughness. You can change the location. So go ahead and find that. And then you go ahead and hit Export. There's always warnings for me. Don't even worry about it. And then there was one last thing we didn't do. So go to Blender. We want to export this for Unity. And so 1 cube is going to be 2 meters. We do not want our candle to be 2 meters tall, so tab in. Scale this thing way down. Move it so that it's centered where you want it. Delete this cube here. Name the candle what you want it. So I'm just going to name it candle. Give it a material. It's like candle material. Very unique and creative. And then I'm going to go ahead and export this. Once you found the folder you want, you go ahead and hit selected objects, experimental, name it whatever you want. I'm doing FBX. You could actually do a .obj if you want to, but either one works. All right, so now we're in Unity. As I pull this thing in, you'll see a couple of mistakes with it. First of all, it's like flipped upside down. Rotation's wrong, position's wrong. So go back to Blender. Inside of Blender, go ahead and hit apply. So it's just Control A, rotation and scale, and then just re-export this. It's probably easier just to do a .obj, but old habits die hard. There you go. And now you'll see that it's actually rotated correctly. So as I bring this in, we're good to go. We want to go ahead and create a new material. Call this whatever you want. Candle material. And then add the different masks. So it gives you an albedo. It gives you an emissive. So you actually have to turn on emissive and drag that there. It gives you a, we didn't want a height. It gives you a normal. And it gives you, oh, we exported the wrong thing. So going back to Substance Painter, go to File, Export Textures, and then I guess I clicked the wrong thing. Unity Standard Metallic, and this should work. Okay. And there we go. Because now you have the albedo, you have the metallic mixed with the roughness, you have the emissive, and we have the normal map, and you have to hit Fix Now. Go ahead and drag that onto the candle, and you can see the candle's looking pretty cool. Now, if we turned off the lights, let's go ahead and do that. You can see, I guess there's still skylight. This thing is going to be glowing in the darkest of rooms. It's really cool looking. And if you ever want to change that, you can go to the emissive and just turn it off, and it gets rid of the emissive. So if you just want a normal candlestick, that's how you do that. Last thing we want to do is we want to create a particle that comes off this little flame here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create an empty. Oh, excuse me, create a, why can't I do this? Create 3D object, 2D object, effects. There we go. Particle. I'm going to name this flame, like such. And obviously it's not looking the way you want it to. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the duration and change that to like 0.5. Change the start lifetime to 0.5, so it's the same. Start speed to 0. Start size to 0.2, like such. I'm going to get rid of the shape, so it's only going to be emitting from a point, namely this point right here. And that does not look like the candle that you want, right? So what you need to do is you need to open up your favorite image editing software and go ahead and create something. So we're just going to use Photoshop. So now that we're in Photoshop, go ahead and go to New. You just need like a 128 by 128. And then I double click this thing to unlock it. I always fill it with black. That way the new layer that I work on is going to be the white, and I can see what my particle actually looks like. Now, in case I want to scale this, I want to actually have the flame be centered right about here. And then I can just draw this up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really fast. Turn off that. There we go. And there. And you can make this look any way you want. Basically, I have a candle flame. You can make that skinnier if you want. I'm going to turn off the other layers, and then I'm going to export this as a PNG. I'm going to name that flame texture. Cool. Back to Unity. Now in Unity, I'm going to right-click, create a new material. Call this like flame material. And change it from standard into a particle additive. Now it always starts as 50% soft. You can make it softer or darker depending on what you want. I guess the darker it is, the softer the particle effect. We want to go ahead and drag and drop our flame texture right here. Like such. And again, that's not exactly perfect looking. Go ahead and drag and drop this new material onto the flame. And that's what our flame's going to look like. So what you want to do is go ahead and change that start size down quite a bit, right? And you get a lot of good feedback from this. Is this looking the way you want it to look? Or is it too fat, too thick, etc.? So I'm going to go back and fix this a little bit. All right, so I changed that a bit. If you want, you can actually vertically stretch this thing, but that's looking just fine for me. All right, so now with the particle selected, you can change the color. So starting color, I like to do this kind of like this orange color like this. Put a little bit of, so go towards the white just a little bit, and that looks pretty good. And now what I like to do is start size. I like to change this to random between two constants. And I want it to be between 0.01, was it? And 0.03. And so you can just change that size. Don't have it be too big of a difference. But there you go. You want to change the emission to be a little bit more. So maybe like 20. Like such. Change the start lifetime to be maybe a little bit less. So it fluctuates a little bit, so it looks like it's flickering. And then the last thing you need to do is change the rotation of this. So starting rotation, random between two constants, -4 to 4. Because now what it's going to do is it's going to bounce back and forth like that. Let's go ahead and look at this in game. Change this to actually be scaled to 1. You can see that it's actually looking pretty good. You got the flicker. The rotation, it makes it move back and forth just a little bit. If you want to, you can kind of play around with the settings to get something a little bit more to your liking. So if you like the -8 to 8, it'd be a more drastic flicker. If you did a smaller size, so like that, increase the rate over time, obviously. But you can see that that would change it quite drastically. Move it down close to the actual candle where you want it. And then size over lifetime. Yeah, I think this is good. And so there you go. You can play around with this, make it a little bit smaller maybe, like that. That looks a little bit better in my opinion. But there you go. So I want to see what you guys make. If you make something, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter. Give me some images of what you guys make. Also, if you want access to this, there is a file on my Patreon for all my silver patrons of a lot of different candles, not just this one candle. Actually, a lot of the candles I've made with the particle effects. And so thank you so much. Have an awesome day, and make sure to give this a thumbs up and a like. See you around. Bye.